My mother-in-law canceled my apartment's contract without asking me.
How can you expect to live with just my grandson? It's your job to take care of us too. Trying to avoid that.
This situation made me feel dizzy and overwhelmed. Movers who I hadn't hired began taking away my furniture.
Well, from now on, you'll even be living. You should prepare yourself.
My mother-in-law said it with a straight face. My mother-in-law suppressed my father-in-law and did anything she wanted. I was happy that at least my father-in-law was a kind person. But this was too much. I couldn't hold myself back anymore. I had reached my limit. No, I've already passed my limit, which is why I came prepared.
Understood.
Well, of course, since this has been decided quickly.
I cut off my mother-in-law as she was speaking and pulled out the thing prepared.
Just as you canceled the contract without asking me, I ended my contract with your son without telling you.
Huh?
At that moment, she understood everything. Her face went pale. My name is Isla. It's been 3 years married my husband Asher. Asher and I are currently living in a studio apartment that my parents bought. My parents manage a company and they are well off. Though I've turned down their financial help since I started working and living in this house. It was a wedding gift, so I had no choice but to accept.
This is to celebrate your wedding, so at least let us do this much.
When my dad said that, I couldn't read. Asher was happy that we could live comfortably, and seeing him like that made me happy too. Our marriage went well, and we had a child relatively quickly. Marriage, pregnancy, and the birth of Gabriel. After meeting my in-laws before the wedding, I rarely saw them. Asher's parents' home was far away, was a hassle for his parents to come us. My father-in-law was an executive in a company, so he couldn't take long vacations. So generally, we would share updates son over the phone.
Even though we can see you over Vide, it's lonely not having you visit in.
My mother-in-law always says that every time on a video call, I wanted to visit them occasionally, but had so much to do. And since our son was still young, I was worried about traveling long distances with him. I also still wasn't fully recovered from giving birth. All I could do was let out a dry laugh and apologize. Days and months passed, and our son, years old, I still can't keep my eyes off him, grown up to be a very good boy and helps me out sometimes. Around that time, my mother-in-law began visiting us more often. Until now, she had said she couldn't because my father-in-law couldn't take vacations, so I wondered how and why she was visiting more often now. At first, she would only come once every few months, but she started visiting us more frequently until she was at our house almost every week.
I've made a new friend recently. They drive me to here.
My mother-in-law said, handing me a new Gabriel.
Asher's father isn't with you?
He's really busy. Even today, he's working on his new project.
My mother-in-law didn't seem to care, she answered.
Since Gabriel has gotten bigger, why you come over to our house? As a wife, it's your job to visit us.
My mother-in-law spoke to me spitefully, but she hugged Gabriel. But even if he's grown bigger, he's still only 3 years old. He hasn't had much experience with long distances, and I'm still teaching him manners and how to act outside the arena. Asher is also busy with work, so fitting a trip into his schedule has been difficult. I'm sure Asher has spoken to his moi but she just wanted to be mean to me.
Even when Gabriel was a baby, you wouldn't let us see him over video calls. It was so sad. My neighbors are all looking forward to meeting Gabriel.
My mother-in-law looked across the room and let out a sigh.
I wonder if living in this fancy house makes you feel like you're so special.
I would never know how to react if this happened to me. Gabriel has also said he doesn't like much. I'm sure he could feel that his anger meant something to me, even if he couldn't understand what she was saying. She started visiting us so often that it became a problem. I asked Asher to talk to her about it. Suddenly, shortly after, we got a see Asher's father had collapsed. Asher quickly took some time off, and we brought him back to our parents' house together.
Your dad suddenly collapsed while he was working. We went to the hospital and took our son, but it seems that there is no life-threatening condition. But his arms and legs are still a bit swollen, so he needs to be taken care of. He's put aside his work for now and is reading in our bedroom.
Since the first time I met my father-in-law, he's always been a quiet person. He didn't say much, but he was always interested to hear about Gabriel. He would send us money and gifts for, and in general, always treated us sick. Though my mother-in-law seemed very upset, he remained calm.
I can't work like I did before, but saved enough money that we don't worry. It's not like I can't work at all. It's not that serious, so you don't worry too much.
His hands were a bit shaky as he held up the book he was reading. My mother looked at him and turned to me.
Since he's like this, why don't you with us to help take care of him? I don't know what I'll do without you as our daughter-in-law, but at least you can do this much.
Huh? But we already have an apartment.
I was worried about how my father-in-law would take it, but he didn't seem to mind at all. We already signed Gabriel up for a swimming lesson in our area, and considering my mother-in-law's personality, she'll be there every day. I turned to Asher, hoping he would be side, but he was nodding along with Mother said,
Won't you be quiet? I'm just saying that's not necessary, and Asher doesn't need to move in. Don't force them into it.
My father-in-law's words hung in the air as the situation was settled. That day, we were able to return home, but my mother-in-law began harassing me even more.
I want you to help me. Get her quickly.
She would call me to say that at Leo week. At first, I believed her and would forgive, but each time it was for something insignificant.
There's a bug in the kitchen, Cat. I need to pull out the weeds from my garden. Can you help me? You got here too late. I've already my problem.
Every time it'd be something like that. But I knew if I ignored her, it would cause huge trauma, so I had no choice but to answer every time.
You know that we live far away, so C isn't that easy, right? Please don't call me over if it's not actually urgent.
If you lived here, you wouldn't have this. You're living leisurely, trying to that my husband and I exist. That's why I'm making you travel this distance. It's your fault, not mine.
My mother-in-law always acted like the victim.
Sure, your husband isn't happy about it.
Him? He's only concerned with himself, and I won't listen to a man who can anymore. Whatever he says, I don't care.
As she was saying this, my mother-owned friend called her on the phone.
I'm going to meet my friend now, so go home. If I have any more problems, I will.
Mentally exhausted, I set out on the journey back home. I've spoken to Asher about this several times, but he just keeps saying the same thing over and over again.
I can't move because of my work here. You're not working, so what's wrong moving in with them? I can't take care of Gabriel.
I couldn't leave Gabriel to be taken by Asher alone. Little by little, I became more acquainted with Asher and his mother. Thinking about Gabriel, I was worried about him growing up in this sort of environment. I secretly decided to take matters into my own hands. One day, I went with Gabriel to the neighborhood grocery store. When we got home, I saw movers unloading their trucks in front of my apartment building. I wondered who in our building could be moving, but as I got closer to my apartment, I saw the movers coming in. Surprised, I asked the movers what V on, and they said they were hired to. When I entered the apartment, I saw his mother ordering the movers around.
Oh, Isla, you're late.
What's happening?
You keep turning down moving in with came here to get you.
I was full of anger, but my mother-in-law looked at me with a smile.
It's your fault for not listening to say, but don't worry, I won't blame you. You'll be taking care of us from now on, making sure we all get along.
I decided talking would get me nowhere with my mother-in-law, so I glared at her.
You're making a scary face. We received this apartment as a present, so we're free to sell it or leave it as we please, right? I'm also worried about my parents. Since you have free time, you can join us. We'll all be happy. Won't that be great?
Have you ever thought about how Gabrielle feels?
Gabriel will make new friends, and you can find a part-time job too. If we're worried about money, we can ask our car parents for help. And if we sell this apartment, we enough money for a while.
If anything, you're at fault since you abandoned your obligations to us. If you understand, get ready to leave.
Seeing how they spoke and nodded to each other without considering my feelings, I couldn't take it anymore.
Fine. Yeah, I got it.
I hugged Gabriel tightly and gave him my biggest smile.
In that case, I'm breaking up with Asher.
Asher was at a loss for words.
What do you mean?
As I said, I'm ready to get a divorce. Leave the rest to you. If you have any complaints, speak to my lawyer. I've recorded our conversations where we talked about how you'll force me to meet with your parents. I also have recordings and text message histories showing how your mother tried to manipulate me into giving her money. It's better for you to not overthink it. Just divorce me.
I went into our bedroom and brought divorce papers I had prepared.
Do you think we'll let you get away with this? Don't you feel sorry for Gabriel?
Gabriel was surprised by his grandmother's yelling, which made him begin to cry.
Grandma, it's scary. I don't like Grandma.
Surprised by Gabriel's cries, everyone looked in to see what had happened. I'm sure they could tell who was the bad person here.
Listen to what Gabriel is saying. I won't mind. I'll move in with my parents for a while, but I'm not worried.
My mother-in-law felt too embarrassed to continue screaming in front of the neighbors, so she went quiet. Having gotten back at her, I felt red.
Asher, things are going to get tough from now on, but I hope you and your family are okay. She just thinks about herself, so you and I will be divorced, so she's to do with me anymore.
I packed a few things and got ready. Anything else I need, I'll buy once my parents' house is sold. Before I left our apartment, I went Asher.
Thanks for everything. Here is my last present to you, to the end of our married life.
As Asher stood there stunned with divorce papers in hand, I handed him photos. The photos showed Asher's mother holding hands and walking happily with a man she didn't know. She lied that she had made a new friend. She was actually having an affair. When she would come over to visit us, he would drop her off with a kiss. I saw them kissing on our apartment building security camera and hire private investigator to confirm ever. She probably planned on forcing me to do everything when I moved in with her so she could have more time for herself. Seeing the photos, Asher's face went red and he began to scream at his mother.
What is this?
Didn't you say you were taking care?
You're wrong. That's not me.
My mother's voice was shaky and I didn't know what would happen next. But I don't have anything to do with anymore, so I can't just stand around watching them forever. I stepped out of the apartment. After speaking with the movers, I made a call.
How are you feeling? Yeah, everything is over.
On the other end of the phone, my father-in-law replied quietly.
You went through a lot. Sorry about. Thank you for helping me find out about my affair. You really helped me out. I will handle the rest. I'm praying for you and Gabriel's hand.
I thanked him and hung up the phone. I'm glad I told him everything. Afterwards, my ex-father-in-law's daughter and her husband. She had been using my father-in-law's retirement money however she wanted. Now that she had to pay it all back, she was in trouble. I've heard she's living in a super apartment now. Even though she's old and her body, she has had to take on multiple part jobs to pay off her debts, since he no longer has time or love for her and she's living a lonely life. I heard all this from Asher. He regretted always being on his Moai side, and he called me to beg me to together with him. Asher said he's also annoyed by his daily complaints and requests for Mo.
Sounds rough, but when I was going through a hard, I tried turning to you. You weren't me at all.
I hung up the phone, cutting off what was beginning to say. I blocked his phone number and cut off ties with him. Since moving back in with my parents, I've been taking some time to relax. After a while, I signed Gabriel up for preschool and started looking for a new job. Now that my mother-in-law is out, I will work as hard as I can for my son.